with my sidekick, Dabby, and today was NovaTeen Book Festival in Virginia, and I got to go and I got to see some cool stuff. This was my second year going to NovaTeen, and it's a pretty small festival in Northern Virginia, and I really like it. It actually reminds me a little bit of my first year going to YALLFest before it got super popular and crazy. It's pretty low-key. The authors are very interactive. It was created by One More Page Books in Virginia, and it's at a high school, and it's a lot of fun. There are panels, and then they do all of the autographs at the same time, which is kind of nice because you don't have to choose between autographs or seeing the authors talk about the amazing things that they do. But at the same time, it's not great because that way everybody's getting autographs at the same time and the lines are much longer. But again, it's a smaller event, so even those lines aren't nearly as long as the lines like at any other convention I've gone to. Anyway, I have some videos and pictures from today, which I will play through.
So my book probably should have been called All of Us Are Lying, because they all are, spoiler alert, they're all lying. And they're doing it for different reasons, though, and I think most of them are reasons that people can identify with. You know, it's because maybe you're, afraid of not measuring up to expectations, or there's just something you're not ready to talk about with people, or, you kind of have to make things work in your life, and this is the only way you can figure out how to do it. And I think what differentiates the villains is that they also, have things happen, sort of to them, or there are things that they want to be different, but they just take it way too far. They take it way beyond that normal, relatable, I'm gonna do this sort of moral gray area thing and go straight into, sort of murdery rage, which makes for a great book, but is pretty, villainous.
But I want to, No, I want to do a murder.
No, bad Kaz.
Fine.
Bad.
Fine.
Hey, will you start the intro?
Yes, I will. Fine.
Ugh.
So, Danielle Clayton spent most of her time as a fairy, and then she had a knife, and then there was a lion. So, I don't think I could. I'm actually very impressed with contemporary writers, because like in my head, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, maybe I could learn, but I'm like, how do you? I was like, so when she was mad, why did she like stab him? And why wasn't there? I just like, because you can do whatever you want, and you don't have to follow like
Real world rules?
Yeah, like, oh, don't hit him, because,
So Harry Potter was sort of your introduction.
and the Magic Treehouse series. Really? Yeah. No, I loved it. You did one point of view, but what if there were four? And so and even now with this, I'm just like, oh, it'd be a lot easier like that, but you're gonna do all this, and you're gonna make book 3 really hard for yourself. So you kind of make peace with your future self as you're writing. But with this, Zaylee's voice is kind of the most dramatic and poetic version of my voice, and I'm not saying I'm a poetic, like you probably see my Insta stories, I'm just sitting there like rolling hot dogs. So it's like she is like the highest elevated, like if I was like that. And so she comes really easy to me. With Mari and Anan, they were the journey for me, because they sounded too much like her in the early drafts. And so I had to keep going and keep going and keep going to really make them, both to discover who they were and like what their journeys were about, but also make them their own people. So actually it's been it got easier towards the end, because I knew them by the end. In the beginning, I didn't know them. So I had to really work and be like, Zaylee would say this. So this, Anan wouldn't say this.
And Amari wouldn't say it either.
Exactly. So that was a little difficult.
Track of as you were going through the adventure.
Yeah.
Because your adventure is huge and so much fun, but it also deals with hard-hitting things.
Yeah, and I'm actually curious too, because I want to know, where did the commentary on beauty, if it started with The World's For You, and then the characters, when did you decide it was going to be about beauty? But I'll answer it first. Before I wrote this, I realized I wanted to be a writer. Well, okay, I knew that, but I stopped lying to myself. So it wasn't like this, oh, you like to do this, you've been doing this for 16 years. It's like, okay, stop lying. If you were living your dream, you would be doing this every day. So then I was like, okay, well, let's look at it the way you tackle anything else you've ever wanted in life. And so I just got really like in the mud about it. And I was like, okay, here are these two things I'm thinking about writing about. One is this like adventure. One would be more like a Black Lives Matter novel. And I was talking to my boyfriend. I was like, I'm getting all these ideas, but I don't know which one to do. Because I was like, this is my creative brain. And I was like, this is what I want to write about. And he was like, I think it's the same book. And I was like, so it was realizing that I could do both. It was complicated, and I couldn't really do both at the same time. So in the early drafts, I just focused on the adventure, and it was really once we cleaned up the adventure, me and my editor, it was then the world stuff, and being like, okay, here's what you're trying to do, but like, oh, that doesn't work. You know, when you're like, oh, that doesn't work, that actually says this, and it's like, you're right. So it was about, I was like, focus on the adventure, and then with edits, refine and make sure what you're trying to say is crystal clear, and then reinforce. Because I think if I did it the other way around, you would get like a really preachy thing, which like, I don't like novels like that, and I don't want people to feel like that. So no, it's like, deliver a great adventure, and then you can figure out how to say what you want to say. So how did it work for you? Like, when did you decide, and this is probably the last thing we can do, but when did you decide you wanted to write about beauty, and then what was the process of incorporating that?
Yeah, when I was 12, I overheard some men at a local mall, because I grew up in Maryland, out in the suburbs, talking about women's bodies. They literally were talking about their hair, their legs, their skin, and comparing them to women in magazines, and whether they would rather have a woman that looked like that. And it felt like, remember those shops, Build-A-Bear? Where you could build your hair. It felt like that, listening to someone.
I got so excited. I
know.
I was like, Build-A-Bear.
Our place.
Yeah, I know that's not where we're going though, sorry.
Right, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I remember that place.
Exactly, yeah. It felt like those guys were trying to build a woman and build a perfect woman. And they were comparing it to the women in their lives. And when you're 12 and your body is like betraying you, and you like have bad acne and puffy hair and you don't feel cute, listening to that terrified me. And it broke something in me, and it made me realize that the way women are talked about in society, the way that their bodies are talked about, is almost like the way food is talked about. And so it's broken into parts, and it's consumed, and it's supposed to be looked at. And I wanted to lean into that conversation about, is there a connection between beauty and power? Why, when we're in high school, are the people that look a certain way the ones that have all the friends, and the ones that teachers love, the ones that are on the top? And I wanted to have that conversation in a fantasy landscape so that we could actually have it. Because sometimes in the real world, we avoid having tough conversations. Yeah. And fantasy for me was a vehicle to lean into that, because it is tough and it's gross, and women and men are culpable in this whole conversation. So, but first, I think that our job is to entertain.
Yeah.
So that's what a book should do, that's what we should be doing, but then you can sort of layer in the things that you want someone to think about. And I think that your book does that really well, and I feel like it's in conversation with a lot of tough stuff. But it's still an adventure. So if a kid picks it up and they don't want to go there, they don't have to go there.
Yeah, and that was fun for me too, because it's like, I don't want to be sobbing every time I write something. It's really exhausting, like kind of annoying. Which is why sometimes I'll be like, it's gonna make me cry, so no. Because people are like, you cry all the time. I was like, I know, it's exhausting.
Getting to the end and thinking, okay, that's how it ends. Now let's go back and let's like foreshadow, you know, we gotta throw in a couple of red herrings, we gotta throw in a couple additional twists, you know, and one of the most helpful things throughout the editing process was like often the middle of a book just kind of sags. You know, and mine was no different. It was sort of like, nothing much is happening. And so what do you do in a thriller when that happens? You throw in more twists. And so it was just like, every chapter it's another twist. And then the book was done. So yeah, that helped. Yeah.
I'm going to start with telling you something about 16-year-old me. Like a lot of 16-year-olds around the country, I wanted to apply to an Ivy League school. I was pretty sure I didn't have a very good chance of getting in. My school advisor was not quiet about the fact that she was pretty sure I didn't have a very good chance of getting in, but I was going to give it my best try. So a representative from this college came to my high school on the coldest day of the year so far. I'm talking I wish I had worn a thicker sweater for the sake of decency kind of cold. And he pretty much looks exactly how you'd expect an Ivy League interviewer to look. Expensive tie, nice blazer, distinguished, also white, also a man. Not that I was expecting otherwise on either point. So we sat down in one of the rooms in the library, and I might not have periscope vision, but I could see the papers on his lap, and I'm pretty sure he had his finger right next to the little box on the application that I had checked that said Hispanic/Latino. And yes, unfortunately, to my recollection at the time, it did say Hispanic/Latino. Luckily, it looks like we're moving away from the term Hispanic and also embracing the term Latinx, which is inclusive of all gender identities. Just for anyone who doesn't know that, I like mentioning that because Latinx is a word I love to see used. So he has his finger next to that box, and he looks up at me. And the first question he asks isn't, why do you want to come to our school? It's not even, why should we let you in? It's not even, where did you get those fabulous shoes? And they were fabulous shoes, by the way. I think they were red high-heeled Mary Janes. Please don't judge me. I was 16. I now understand that I do not have the attitude to pull off red high-heeled Mary Janes for an interview. Not unless that interview has a talent and evening gown portion immediately following. So the first question this interviewer had for me when he looked up from his little stack of papers was, how do you plan to pay your tuition? I said, nothing. I said nothing for so long, I'm pretty sure he just moved on to some other question, and I proceeded to give the worst interview of my life. Because I realized what he saw when he looked at me, and when he looked at that little box I had checked. That the first thing he thought worth asking didn't really feel like a question. It felt more like a warning, a reminder of my place. Maybe at first, how do you plan to pay your tuition isn't such an awful question. College tuition tends to involve mind-boggling numbers, and it wasn't exactly unreasonable to assume that my family didn't have that kind of money just lying around, especially with how I dressed compared to my classmates, despite my fabulous shoes. My mother has fabulous natural style, but I did not, and I did not know how to fake keeping up with the gringas. So how I look probably had something to do with it.
Okay, I got to see some authors I love, as you can see, and some of them I already have autographs from, but here are the autographs that I was able to get today. I got Unearthed by Megan Spooner and Amy Kaufman, signed by Megan Spooner. Amy Kaufman was not there. Hunted by Megan Spooner. The Bells by Danielle Clayton, which there was this great conversation between her and Tommy Adeyemi. This one I did not get signed this weekend because it was already signed, but she was there, and I really enjoyed seeing her again and hearing from her because I didn't get a chance to actually go to any panels she was in at Y'all Fest, so this time I got to really hear from her. The Bells is coming highly recommended by one of my friends who only recommends books that become like my favorites, so I'm really excited to read this one soon, hopefully, but we'll see. Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is one that I actually audiobooked a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting a moment to talk with the author, and once I saw her there and she was talking about the book, I kind of remembered how awesome this book was, and I'm like, okay, I need to buy it and get it signed. And I got to talk with the author for a minute and tell her a couple of my most basic thoughts, which was cool. And yeah, this one is definitely worth reading for everybody. One of Us is Lying. I've had this arc for so long, and it is my most watched video, and it made my top 10 of 2017, and I was really excited to meet her, and I told her all of this, and yeah, that's all I got. I love this book. If you haven't read this one yet, read it, because it was awesome. It is awesome. Just read it. She did say that there were a couple changes from the arc, but nothing like super major, so I'm kind of interested in what those are. Maybe I'll find out someday. And finally, I got my copy of Tess of the Road signed, and this is an arc as well, which I was of course hoping to read before it came out, but I didn't. So yeah, those are the books I got signed at NovaTeen Book Festival today. I got to meet some awesome people. Shout out to the girls I was hanging out with. one of which is also a booktuber, and we subscribe to each other's channels today. So hi if you're watching. Definitely, if you are in the DC area or willing to come to the DC area, definitely come to this one in the future. It's a ton of fun. Like I said, it's low-key, very interactive, and pretty awesome. Oh, and I wore my Hamilton shirt because why not? Anyway, I think that's it. I'm still trying to make it through Children of Blood and Bone. I'm loving it. It's just really long, and there's a lot going on in my life right now, but I'm still working my way through that. Hopefully I will have a review for that soon, especially because there's another book I really want to pick up on Tuesday, but I need this to be finished first, so I'm trying. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Twitter at ReaderGonnaRead, just like my YouTube channel, and subscribe by clicking down there or up there. I will talk to you next time. Goodbye! Hey, Ellie and Dobby here. Like the video? Come subscribe. Do it right now. Click it.